All right, we are recording now, okay. So we're just gonna start with just a quick little poll. It's just a poll asking what class you're in. So UNVS 15S, Stat 95, or PH 67. All right, awesome. So it looks like most of us are in Stat 95. We have one person that's in UNVS 15S. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and start. If I'm gonna be asking you guys like to answer a lot. If you feel comfortable, you can unmute. If not, you could always just send your answer in the chat. That would be perfect. And then if you have any questions along the way, you could stop me or put it in the chat box and I'll go over your question. So let's go ahead and start. Okay, so our first thing, we're gonna write down the formulas for variance, standard deviation, and z-score. So can anyone tell me what the formula for variance is? All right, that's okay. I'll give it. So the formula for variance is, so the sum of x squared minus, and then in brackets, the sum of x in parentheses squared divided by n. And then the whole thing is divided by n. So can anyone tell me what n is? What does n stand for?
The number of values that you have.
Yes, good, thank you. So that's the sample size. So n is equal to the sample size. Good, thank you. And then does anyone know what the difference between this and this is?
Isn't one of them where you take each value and you subtract it from the sum? I'm not quite sure if I remember it correctly.
Okay, so for this one, I'm gonna draw an arrow to it. So for this one, that's the sum of all the numbers squared. So the first thing you do is square them all. Square all numbers. And then the second thing you do is add all the numbers up. And then for the other one, so this one, that is the sum of all the numbers and then you square it. So first you add them up, add all the numbers, and then, oops, not 3, 2. And then you square this, the sum number. So it's only, you only square one number. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, good. So can anyone tell me what the formula for the standard deviation is? It's very similar to the formula for variance, if that helps anyone remember.
I don't want to keep talking as like the only person, but you would do the square root of the variance, I believe.
Good, thank you. Thank you for answering. That's perfect. So it's just the, oops, sorry, not the square root of the standard, square root of the variance. So if you want to write the whole thing out again, it's the square root of the sum of x squared minus, and then brackets, sum of x squared divided by n, and the whole thing divided by n. Okay, good. Okay, so what about the formula for the z-score? Anyone can answer. It's okay if you don't know or if you get it wrong. That's totally fine. You could always type in the chat box also. All right, that's okay. So the formula for the z-score is x minus x with the bar on top divided by the standard deviation. So I'm going to put SD. So can anyone tell me what the x with the bar on top is? So this one right here. Can anyone tell me what that is? The mean, yes. Oh yes, thank you guys. X bar. So X bar is the mean, yes, so good. Divided by sigma. So yes, another way of writing standard deviation is sigma. Good, thank you for pointing that out. All right, good. All right, so let's move on. So let's move on to the first problem. So we're gonna find the mean, the range, the variance, and the standard deviation. So let's start. We're gonna have a poll on this one. So go ahead and find the mean, and then we're gonna have, you could just pick your, whatever you get on the poll. All right, it looks like most people picked 10.8. Good. Okay, perfect. So that is the correct answer, 10.8. So we're gonna do the sum of all the numbers divided by n, right? So can anyone tell me what the top number should be? So the sum of all of them, what are they all added up? 54, good. And then what is n? How many are in the sample? 5, good. All right, 54 divided by 5, which was 10.8. So that's our mean. So I see someone asked if you will be getting the copy of these notes after the session. Once we're done, I'm going to send out a survey link. So you just fill the survey out. It's just asking how I did, how you felt, the material covered your class, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll put your email. And then once you complete that survey, I'll send you an email that has the blank worksheet and then the worksheet that we are writing on and then the separate key. So you'll get all of that once you fill out the survey. All right, so moving on. So let's do the range now. This one's going to be another poll. So go ahead and do the range and then select what you get. All right, looks like most people voted 8, so good. Okay, let's do this together. So what is the largest number? So it's the range is the largest minus the smallest, right? So what is the largest number in the set? 16, good. Okay, and what about the smallest? So 16 minus the smallest. Good, the smallest is 8, thank you. Okay, so 16 minus 8 is 8, so that's our range, 8. Okay, so now we're going to find the variance. So we wrote the formula for variance already. We said it's the sum of x squared minus, and then in parentheses, the sum of x, and then square that divided by n is equal, or divided by n, the whole thing divided by n. Good. Okay, so what should we plug in right here? So we'll do the math. So we need to square all the numbers and then add them up. So 10 squared would be 100. 9 squared would be 81. 8 squared is 64. 11 squared is 121. And I don't know what 16 squared is. Can someone tell me what 16 squared is?
That's 256.
256, thank you. So 256. So now we just add them all up. So can someone tell me what those all added up are? $622. Good, thank you. So it's going to be 622 minus, and then we'll do this. Okay, so now the next part, we need to add them all up and then square them. So we already added them up when we found 54, right? When we did the mean, we found all of them added up was 54. So what's 54 squared?
$2,916.
Yes, good, thank you. So 2,916. Okay, and then what do we put for n? What is n?
That would be 5, right?
5, yes, good, thank you. Okay, so 5, and then we divide the whole thing by n again, which we just said was 5, right? So now let's do it step by step. So what is this part? So 2,916 divided by 5. Good, 583.2. So 583.2. Okay, so now what is 622 minus 583.2? 38.8. Good, thank you. So 38.8 divided by 5. So now what is 38.8 divided by 5? Good, 7.76. Thank you. So 7.76. So that's our standard deviation. So does anyone have any questions on any of the steps we did on that one?
Wait, sorry, that was the variance, not the standard deviation,
Oh,
right?
yes, sorry. That's the variance. My bad. You're right. It's the variance. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. If you ever have a question, you could even private message me if you want, and I can say it for everyone. Okay, so now for the standard deviation. So we already said that the standard deviation is the square root of variance. So all we have to do is take the square root of 7.76. So can anyone tell me what that is? About 2.8, yes. So it's 2.79. So that's our standard deviation. So did anyone have any questions on how we got anything in that problem? All right, so now we're gonna test your skills. So we're gonna do another problem that's the exact same thing, but with different numbers, and all of them are gonna be poles this time. So let's start with finding the mean. So go ahead and find the mean for this one. All right, so it looks like almost everyone got the correct answer. So let's go over how we did it. So we add all of them up, and all of them added up is equal to what? Can someone tell me? 33. Yes, thank you. So 33, and then what's n? How many are in the sample? 7. Yes, thank you. So that is equal to 4.71. Okay, so that's our mean. So then let's go on to find the range. I'm going to write the numbers back at the top right here since you can't see them. Okay, so now let's find the range. So go ahead and calculate that and then put what you get into the pole. All right, good. So it looks like everyone got that one. So we just do the biggest minus the smallest. So what's the biggest number in the sample? 9. Yes, thank you. And what's the smallest? 1. Good. So 9 minus 1 is 8. So that's our range. All right, so now we're going to find the variance. So go ahead and calculate what you think the variance is going to be and put it in the poll, and then we'll go over it after we get some votes on the poll. I'm going to rewrite the equation just in case anyone forgot what the equation is. So b is equal to the sum of x squared minus, and then in brackets, the sum of x squared divided by n, and then the whole thing divided by n. All right, I know this one's going to take a while, so take your time. Oh, it's also okay to be wrong. Just to give your best guess, your best try, and then we'll go over it after. Don't worry if you get it wrong. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. All right, so let's go over this one. So we need to do the sum of x squared. So that means that we're going to square all of the numbers first and then add them, right? So let's square them all. So 1 squared is 1, 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, plus 9 squared is 81, plus 3 squared is 9. So can anyone add that up and tell me what they got? Or if you did it in the problem, tell me what you got for that part. 201. Yes, good. So 201. Oops, forgot the 1. Okay, minus. Okay, so now we're going to do this part. So the sum of x in parentheses squared. So that means we're going to add them all up and square it. So we already added them up in the mean. So we said them all added up was 33. So now we just need to do 33 squared. So can anyone tell me what 33 squared is? 1089. Good, thank you. 1089. Okay. And then what was n? That was what we divided 1089 by. I mean, that's what we divided 33 by in the mean. So what's n? 7. Yes, thank you. 7. Okay, and then the whole thing divided by 7 again. Okay, so what is the 1089 divided by 7? So what is this part right here? So it's just 1089 divided by 7. So if anyone could plug that in their calculator and tell me what they get. Good. 155.57. Good. So 201 minus 155.57 divided by 7. Thank you. Okay, so what about 201 minus 155.57? So just this top part. 45.43. Good. So 45.43 divided by 7. Okay, so what's that? 45.43 divided by 7. 6.49. Good. So that's our standard, or that's our variance, right? So now let's see what our standard deviation would be. So go ahead and plug that into the calculator and tell me what you get. So remember, we said that standard deviation is equal to the square root of variance. Okay, so remember that and then plug it into your calculator and tell me what you get. All right, perfect. So it looks like everyone got that one. So it's the square root of 6.49. So can anyone tell me what that was? What the correct answer was? 2.55. Good, thank you. 2.55. Okay, so did anyone have any questions on that one? Any questions at all? You could private message me your question if that's better for you as well, if you had a question. Or you can unmute and shout it out as well. All right, so now we're gonna move on to z-scores. So let's start with the first one. So the grades on a psychology exam had a mean of 85%. The standard deviation for this exam was 2. Allie scored an 86 on the exam. What is the z-score for Allie's exam? Okay, so we said in the beginning that the formula for the z-score is z is equal to the score minus the mean divided by the standard deviation, right? So let's plug in what we know. So a mean of 85%, standard deviation was 2, and Allie scored an 86. So what should we plug in for the first x? So for this one right here, what should we plug in? $86, yes, thank you. So 86 minus, okay, what about the second x, the x bar? $85, yes, thank you. Okay, so 85. And then what was the standard deviation? 2. Yes, thank you. Okay, so 86 minus 85 is 1 divided by 2. So that means our z-score is 0.5, right? So does anyone have any questions on that problem? All right, and let's move on to the next one. So this one is going to be a poll one. Okay, so let me start the poll. And then we'll read the question and then you could do the calculation and tell me what you get. So the average price of a house in California is $440,000. The standard deviation for a house in California is $50,000. You bought a house for $350,000. What is the z-score for the price of your house in California? We're going to use the same equation that we used before. So z is equal to the score minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So go ahead and plug in all the numbers and then let me know what you get. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So it looks like everyone that voted got it correctly. So let's plug it in and see how we did it. So what should we plug in for the first x for the score? What should we plug in? So what should we plug in right here for this x? 350,000. Good, thank you. So 350,000. Now what is the mean? What should we plug in for x bar? 440,000. Good, thank you. 440,000. Okay, and what about the standard deviation? What's the standard deviation? 50,000. Good, thank you. 50,000. Okay, so when you subtract 350,000 minus 440,000, what do you get? So just subtracting the top part. So 350,000 minus 440,000. Negative 90,000. Yes, thank you. So negative 90,000 divided by 50,000. So what do you get from when you plug that in? Negative 90,000 divided by 50,000. Negative 1.8. Yes, so our z is equal to negative 1.8. Good. So does anyone have any questions on that one? All right, let's move on then. So a sample of n equals 25 scores is obtained from a population with a mean of 50 and a standard deviation of 10. If the sample mean is 40, then the z-score of the sample mean is blank. Okay, so for this one, instead of doing the standard error, or standard deviation, we have to use standard error. So does anyone know what the equation for standard error is? That's okay if you don't. No worries if you don't. No idea. Yes. Okay, let's see. Sigma divided by the square root of n. Yes, thank you. So it's the standard deviation divided by the square root of n. So now that we have to use standard error, there's a special equation for z that we have to use. So does anyone know what that is? I'll give you a hint. It's something divided by the standard error. And if you don't know, that's totally okay. No worries if you don't know. All right, x minus x bar divided by sigma divided by the square root of n. Yes, so you're really close. So for this one, it's the sample mean. You're very close. So sample mean, so sample x bar minus population mean. So I'm just going to abbreviate pop. So population mean. So good. Thank you for trying. You were really, really, really close. So, all right. So now that we know the equations that we have to use, let's try it on our problem. So let's do the standard error first. So standard error. So we have the equation right here. So let's go ahead and try it. So what is our standard deviation? 10, yes. Okay, good. So what is n? So we're going to do the square root of n. So what's n? $25, yes, thank you. Okay, so square root of 25. So 10 divided by, so the square root of 25. Can anyone tell me what the square root of 25 is? 5, yes, thank you. So 10 divided by 5 is 2, right? Okay, so now we have to plug everything we know into the z equation. So can anyone tell me what the sample mean is? What number they give us in the question that is our sample mean? 40, yes, thank you. Okay, so 40 minus, so now what's the population mean?
50.
50, yes, thank you. Okay, so 40 minus 50, and then we just said the standard error is 2, right? Okay, so 40 minus 50 is negative 10, right? And then divided by 2. So what's negative 10 divided by 2?
Negative 5.
Yes, thank you. So negative 5. So that's our answer. So does anyone have any questions on that one? All right, so let's move on to the next one. So this one is going to be another poll. So you do the same thing that we just did in that problem. You're just going to do it on this one. So go ahead and try it out and then pick what you get. And then we'll go over it again. So we're using the same equations that we just used, just with different numbers. Okay, so we had a question in the chat. It says, how do you know to use standard error on the bottom instead of the Z formula from the other problem? So for this problem, this is a sample mean. And then in the other problem, it says a population. So it doesn't say, but in the other sample, it's a population. So you're going to use this formula right here when it specifically says sample. If it doesn't say that, then you're going to use the other one. Does that make sense? So that you use this one when it says sample, specifically says sample. And then you use the other formula. So we use this formula when it's a population. All right, cool. All right, so we'll wait a couple more seconds for this poll. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Okay, so it looks like everyone that answered got it correct. So let's go ahead and try it for ourselves. So let's start by calculating the standard error. Okay, so what's the standard deviation? $21, yes, thank you. Okay, and then what is n? $49, yes, thank you, perfect. Okay, so 21 divided by the square root of 49. So it should be 21 divided by 7. So what's 21 divided by 7? 3, yes, perfect. Okay, 3. So now we just need to plug it into the z-score formula we have. So z is equal to, so what's the sample mean? What's the first number we should have? 112, good. Okay, and what about the population mean? 117, yes. And then we already said the standard error was 3. Okay, so 112 minus 117 is negative 5, and then divided by 3. So what's negative 5 divided by 3? Yes, so negative 1.67. Thank you. Perfect. So negative 1.67. So that's our answer. So does anyone have any questions on that, on how we got that? All right. So let's move on to the next one. So for a normal distribution with a mean of 86 and a standard deviation of 3, what is the probability of randomly selecting a score greater than 92? So does anyone know how we would start this problem? It's okay if you don't know, or if you get it wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just trying your best. All right, so we'll start by finding the z-score. So we're going to go back to using, we would do a formula for a z-table and then find the proportion on the z-table. Yes, good. Okay, so we're going to go back to using our old equation. So z is equal to x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. Okay, so let's do that. So what should we plug in for x? What's the first x? $92. Yes, thank you. So 92 minus, okay, what about the mean? What's the mean? So we just need the mean from the table. 86. Yes, thank you. So 92 minus 86. And then what about the standard deviation? 3. Thank you. Okay, so 92 minus 86 divided by 3. So what is 92 minus 86 divided by 3? So 92 minus 86 is 6 divided by 3. So what's 6 divided by 3? 2. Yes, good. Okay, so now we need to go to our z-table and find what that is on the table. So does anyone not know how to read the z-table? That's okay if you don't. You could send it to me private message, and so that way no one has to know that you don't know, and I'll go over it. If someone doesn't know, I'll go over it. It's okay to not know, by the way. But if you do know, what would we get if you plug it into the z-table? So go ahead and look at your z-table and plug 2 in, and then tell me what you get. Good, 0.9772. Perfect. So I'm going to put z-table. So that's just what we got from the table. So it should be 0.9772. Okay. So now that we found out what the z-table value is that our answer, or do we need to do anything else to it? One minus, good. Okay, so I'm going to go over this. So because this problem says greater than 92, so that means, I'm going to write this out. So if the question says, if it's asking for probability and the question says greater than, then you're going to do 1 minus the value you get from z-table. So what if it says less than? What would we do instead? If it said less than 92, what would we do? Would that be our answer, or do we need to do something else? So if it says less than, then that is just our answer. So it would be z-table. So whatever you get from the z-table would be your answer. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on that? This is always the way it is when it's asking for the probability of selecting a score greater than or less than a number. All right, so let's do it with this one. So it says greater than 92, so we should do what? Subtract, yes. So we're going to do 1 minus 0.9772. So can anyone tell me what that is? 0.0228. Good. So does anyone have any questions on that one? Well, that's our answer right there. Does anyone have any questions at all? All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So this one is going to be a poll question. So let me pull up the poll. Would we have to convert it to percentage? No. So that would be your answer, is just the 0.0228. Unless it says, unless it specifically asks for the percentage in the question. So it says like, what is the percentage of the probability of randomly selecting? So if the question said percentage in it, then you would convert to percentage. So in order to convert to percentage, you just multiply by 100, right? So you only would do a percent if it asks for the percent. But if it doesn't ask, you just leave it in the decimal. Okay, so let's do the next one. Let me pull that up. Okay, probability. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the next one. So you do very similar things. So for a normal distribution with a mean of 42 and a standard deviation of 2, what is the probability of randomly selecting a score less than 43? So we're going to use the same z-score formula. So z is equal to the score minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So go ahead and try it and let me know what you get. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll. All right, so it looks like we have a tie between two answers. So we have a tie between 0.6915 and 0.3085. So let's go over it. Okay, so what should we plug in for the first x? What is the score? So what do we plug in there on the x? 43, yes, thank you. So 43, what about the mean? What's the mean? 42, yes, thank you. And then what about the standard deviation? 2, yes. Okay, so 43 minus 42 is -1 divided by 2, right? Sorry, not negative, +1 divided by 2, which is equal to 0.5. So when you plug that into your z table, what value do you get? Good, 0.6915. Okay, so let's go back to the question. So the question says, what is the probability of randomly selecting a score less than 43? So less than 43. Now, if we go back to what I wrote up here, right? So it says less than is equal to the z table value. So what should our answer be then? The same. Yes, good. So this is our answer. Perfect. So does anyone have any questions on that before we move on? All right, perfect. So let's move on. So a normally distributed population has a mean of 32 and a standard deviation of 4. What is the probability of randomly selecting a sample of size 9 that has a mean greater than 37? So, can anyone tell me if we should use this equation up here, this equation, or this equation. So the one with standard error, the one with standard deviation. Which one should we use? The sample mean equation, since you are giving both sample mean and population mean. Good. So that means we're going to use this one up here. Good. Thank you. Okay. So we need to find the standard error first. So standard error is equal to the standard deviation divided by the square root of n. So what is our standard deviation? 4. Yes. Okay, so 4. And what is our n? What is n? Yes, 9. Okay, so 4 divided by the square root of 9. So 4 divided by 3. So what is 4 divided by 3? 1.3. Good. Okay, so now let's do the okay, so now let's do our equation. So what is the sample mean? 37. Good. And what's the population mean? 32. Good. Divided by, so now we divide by the standard error, which we said was 1.3. Okay. So 5 divided by 1.3. So what's 5 divided by 1.3? 3.85. Yes. Okay. So this is probably off your Z table, right? 3.85 is not on your Z table. Or if it is, tell me what you get on there. Yeah, your Z table only goes to, okay, so I think that I made an error when making this worksheet. So I'm gonna change it really quickly and then I'll fix it. So instead of saying the size 9, it's gonna be size 3. So instead of having the square root of 9, we're gonna have the square root of 3. Okay, so 4 divided by the square root of 3. So can anyone tell me what 4 divided by the square root of 3 is? 4 divided by the square root of 3. Good, 2.31, thank you. 2.31, okay, so now we just have to do 2.31 right here. Okay, so 5 divided by 2.31. Can anyone tell me what that is? 2.16, yes. Good. Okay. 2.16. Okay, what do you get when you plug that into your Z table? Okay, good. 0.9846. Okay, so is that our answer, or do we need to do something to it? Do we need to do 1 minus that? Or is that our answer?
Since it's asking for something that's greater, we would subtract it.
Yes, good. Okay, so we do 1 minus 0.9846. So what is that if someone could plug that into their calculator? Good, 0.0154. So that's our answer. Does anyone have any questions on that? No? All right. Let's move on to the next one. So the average IQ score is 100. The standard deviation for IQ scores is 10. What proportion of IQ scores are between 90 and 115? So does anyone have any idea of how we should approach this problem or start? All right, so that's okay. So what we need to do is find the z-score of both 90 and 15. So we're going to find the z-score of 90 and the z-score of 115, and then we're going to subtract them from each other. So let's start from doing the z-score of 90. So z of 90. Okay, so what should we plug in for the first x? What should our first x be? 90, yes, thank you. So 90 minus, okay, and what's the mean? 100, good. Okay, and what about the standard deviation? 10, yes. Okay, so 90 minus 100 is negative 10, right? Divided by 10, which is equal to negative 1. So go ahead and plug that into your z table and tell me what you get for that. And then in case anyone does have to leave early, I'm going to send the link out in the chat that has the survey. So you just have to fill the survey out and make sure you put your email, and then I'll email you all the filled out stuff and the blank worksheet and all that stuff. I'll be sure to send that to you. All right, so what do you get when you plug negative 1 into the z table? Zero 0.1587, good. So 0.1587. All right, so now let's find the z of 115. So what should we plug in for our first x? So this x right here.
Oh, would that be 115?
Yes, good. Okay, so 115 minus, so we already said that the mean is 100 and that the standard deviation was 10. So it's going to be 15 divided by 10. So can anyone tell me what 15 divided by 10 is?
That's 1.5.
Yes, thank you. So which is equal to 1.5. So now when you plug that into your z table, what do you get? Good, 0.9332. Good, so 0.9332. Okay, so now we just subtract the bigger one from the smaller one. So 0.9332 minus 0.1587. So can anyone tell me what that is? So it's positive, but yes, you got it right. So 0.7745, right? So the bigger one minus the smaller one. So that gives us 0.7745. Good. So does anyone have any questions on this one? All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So this one's going to be a poll question. So let me start the poll. All right, here we go. So the mean of a population is 99 and the standard deviation is 3. What proportion of scores falls between 90 and 107? So we're going to use the same equation and everything, just with different numbers. So go ahead and work that one out and let me know what you get through the poll. So you just find the z-score of 90 and the z-score of 107, and then you plug those into the table and then subtract them. Subtract the bigger one from the smaller one. And let me know what you get. All right, we'll wait about 30 more seconds. All right, I'm going to close in about 5 seconds, so give it your best guess. All right, so let's go over it. So let's start by finding the z-score of 90. So z of 90. So what should we put for the first x? 90, good. Okay, 90, and then what is the mean? 99, good. Okay, and what about the standard deviation? 3, good, thank you. So 90 minus 99 is -9, divided by 3 is -3. So what do you get when you plug that into your z-table? So just plug -3 into the z-table and tell me what you get. Good, 0.0013. Okay, so 0.0013. Okay, so let's do z of 107 now. So what should we plug in for the first x? 107, good. And we already said that the mean was 99 and that the standard deviation is 3. So what is 107 minus 99 divided by 3? So it's going to be 8 over 3. So what's 8 divided by 3? 2.67, good. So what do you get when you plug that into a z-table? Good, 0.9962. Okay. I think it's 63, 0.9963. Let me double check. So 2.67, 2.67. 7. Okay, no, you're right. 0.62. My fault. Okay. All right, good. So when you do, so now we need to subtract the bigger one from the smaller one, right? So we're going to do 0.9962 minus 0.0013. So what is the answer? What is that? Yes. Okay, good. So 0.9949 or rounded would be 0.995. Good. So that's our answer. So does anyone have any questions on that one? All right, good. So let's move on to the next one. So now we're moving on to margin of error. So if the standard error of the mean is 5 and the critical values for 95% confidence interval is 3.11, what is the margin of error? So does anyone know how we do this problem or how we should approach it or start or anything? All right, no worries. So let's start with the equation. So the equation for margin of error, I'm just going to abbreviate to ME, is equal to the standard error multiplied by the critical values. Okay, good. So let's try that. So ME is equal to, so what was the standard error from the problem?
5.
5, yes. So 5, and then what about the critical value?
3.11.
Yes, so 3.11. So what is 5 times 3.11? 15.55. Good. All right, so that's our answer. That's it. So does anyone have any questions on that? No? All right, let's move on to the next one. So if the margin of error is 4.56, compute the 95% confidence interval for a sample mean of 17. So does anyone know how you do this one? Okay, so all you do is you do 17 plus or minus 4.56. So let's write that out. So 17 plus 4.56 and 17 minus 4.56. So what is 17 plus 4.56?
That would be 21.56.
Yes, thank you. And then what about 17 minus 5.6? I mean 4.6. I think I said 5.6. So 17 minus 4.56. 12.44. Good. Okay. So our answer is going to be, so this is how you write it out. So it's going to be 12.44 to 21.56. And then that's the answer. Does anyone have any questions on that? No? All right. So let's move on. We're going to come back to prediction if we have enough time, because I think hypothesis testing is going to be either was just on your exam or will be on your exam right now. So let's go over that first. So we're going to make alternative hypothesis, null hypotheses, and statistical hypotheses. So let's start with the first one. So create an alternative hypothesis and null hypothesis for the following situations. A researcher wants to determine if there's a positive relationship between sending and receiving text. He uses the following data, and then it gives you the data. So how would we write, what would the alternative hypothesis be? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me what an alternative hypothesis is?
Isn't it when in the population there is a change or difference within a relationship?
Yes, good. So the alternative hypothesis is basically saying that there is some sort of relationship between what you're testing. So for this one, the researcher is trying to test if there's a positive relationship between sending and receiving texts. So can anyone guess at what the alternative hypothesis might be? All right, I'm going to write it out. So there is a significant positive relationship between sending and receiving text. Okay, now what about the null hypothesis? Can someone tell me what the null hypothesis is, or what a null hypothesis is, the definition of a null hypothesis?
It would be like saying that the odds of it are something about the chances of it happening by accident. I'm not entirely certain, but kind of like the opposite of the alternative hypothesis.
Yes, perfect. So it's the opposite of the alternative hypothesis. So it's basically saying that there's no significant relationship. Whatever you're seeing is not significant, right? So the null hypothesis for this one is there is not a positive significant relationship oops, I didn't mean to put a space there. Relationship between sending and receiving texts. All right, good. So now let's go over the statistical hypothesis. So the statistical hypothesis is basically putting what you wrote into number form. So let's start with the HA. So the HA is the alternative hypothesis, right? And then the HO is the null. So I'm going to write that right by them. So that way you can remember which is which. So HA is alternative and HO is null. Okay, so what should we put for the HA? So it's going to be P is something to 0. So we're going to put some symbol in between that. So should we put equals So P is equal to 0, P is greater than 0, or P is less than 0. Which one should we pick?
Would it be greater because we're saying that there's a positive relationship?
Yes, good. So it's going to be P is greater than 0. So what about for the null hypothesis? What should we put? So should we put less than, or should we put equal to?
It would be equal to.
Yes, good. So P is equal to 0 because there's no significant relationship, right? So does anyone have any questions on that? All right, so let's test ourselves with this one. So we're gonna guess which one is the alternative hypothesis. So there's two choices here, and one is the alternative hypothesis and one is the null. So it's either there is a difference in taste preference for the different types of coffee, or there's no taste, or taste preference will be the same for different types of coffee. So based on question number 2, which one is the alternative hypothesis? All right, I'll give 15 more seconds to pick which one is the alternative. All right, so it looks like we have a tie between the two. So, like we said before, the alternative hypothesis says that there is a relationship, right? So in the question, it says that the researcher wants to determine if there is a taste difference for 4 different coffees. So if there is a relationship, that means that there is going to be a difference in the taste preference for all the different types of coffee. So that's going to be our alternative hypothesis. So there is a difference in taste preference for the different types of coffee. All right, good. All right, so let's do the null hypothesis. So what do you think is the null hypothesis then? If we said that that was the alternative, what would be the null? I see your question, just checking the recording will be sent to us as well. I'm not sure if I will send out the recording, but the recording will definitely be posted on the College of Health and Human Sciences Student Success Center YouTube channel. But I can check to see if I can send it out when I email you guys. All right, so there is no difference in the taste preference for the different types of coffee. Yes, good. So taste preference will be the same for the different types of coffee. Okay, so now let's do the statistical hypothesis, okay? So we'll do HA again and HO. So what should we put for HA? So I'm going to go back to the question, just in case you need the question to help you out. So does anyone have a guess on what it should be?
Would it just be like not equal to 0 since it doesn't specify whether it should be positive or negative?
Yes, so you're very close. So this one's a little bit more confusing. It's a little bit more than the last one. So it is going to be not equal to, but for this, we're going to put P1. So P1 is not equal to P2, which is not equal to P3, which is not equal to P4, because we're saying that there's 4 different taste preferences, right? Because there's 4 different kinds of coffee. So they're all not equal to each other. So yes, you're correct on the not equal part. So what about the null? What should the null be?
It would be P1 is equal to P2 is equal to P3 is equal to P4.
Yes, perfect. So P1 is equal to P2, which is equal to P3, which is equal to P4. Good. So does anyone have any questions on that? Oh, I see your comment, Adriana. Thank you for coming. Don't forget to fill out the survey and I'll email you all that information. Perfect. Okay, so let's do the error types now. So what error type happens if you reject the null hypothesis? Is it a type 1 error or a type 2 error? So type 1 or type 2. Does anyone know which one it is?
Is it type 1?
Yes, good, perfect. So it's type 1. So anytime that you reject the null, it's always a type 1 error. So if we retain the null, that means it's a type what error? 2, yes, type 2 error. So anytime you retain the null, it's a type 2. So I'm going to write it right here. So reject the null. It's type 1. And then retain the null. Oops. Retain the null. It's a type 2. So does anyone have any questions on that? All right, no questions. All right, well, that's all I have for today. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share. So let me share my other screen really quickly. Okay, my mouse is gone, there we go. Okay, share screen. Okay, share. Okay, so this is the flyer for my tutoring services. So if there was anything that you were hoping that we would cover, but we didn't cover, you could go ahead and schedule an appointment with me, or if you wanted some one-on-one tutoring, you could go ahead and schedule with me. You just schedule through Spartan Connect. And yeah, so if you have any questions, go ahead and email me or join Spartan or join a tutoring service through Spartan Connect. And then we also are going to be posting this, the link to, or the video that we just went over to the College of Health and Human Services Student Success Center YouTube channel. So here's the link to that. If you want to also look it up, the YouTube channel is under CHHS SSC. That's the YouTube channel. And then everyone should have the link to the survey. I'm going to send it again just in case anyone lost it. Perfect. All right, I see someone asked, I looked at your schedule, but they were all taken. So I am pretty booked right now up. There is an appointment directly after this at 4. I'm not sure. You have to schedule an hour before, so I don't know if you'd have enough time to book now. But I should have some availability towards the end of next week. If not, we aren't doing tutoring services during spring break. But once spring break comes back, we'll be right back to it. If you do want to schedule today, right after this, from 4 to 5, go ahead and let me know now, and then I could get you signed up if that's what you wanted to do.
Could I show you like my screen so to make sure that I'm like looking at the right thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing.
Can we just stop the recording?
Yes, let me stop the